Parents of Reddit. What is the weirdest internet search history you've discovered your child searching? As a kid, I searched XXX movie in Google anticipating the movie XXX, starring Vin Diesel. Boy oh boy was I wrong. I clicked on the first link and it brought me to a really raunchy porn site. I think I was about 10 or 11 at the time and I thought it was fake. Suddenly, my screen starts getting flooded with pop-ups, so I quickly turn off the computer and run away. Fast forward to later that night, my dad gets on the computer, sees all these pop-ups, unplugs the computer, and blames it on my then teenage brother. I have yet to tell them. Minecraft porn. What the f? My friend searched for hot and dirty African slaves after having touched on the slave trade in school. He was searching for it in completely innocent terms, as in those that worked on plantations, worked in the hot sun and the dirt. But his mom took it as something sexual and banned him from the internet for a month. How to get a six-pack for kids. Oh, and how to get away with murderer. My son is 8. After a serious chat, I uncovered that he meant how to get away from a murderer. Need to sleep with one eye open, just in case. When my little brothers were 6 and 7, we saw they had typed boobs on YouTube. All they got was breastfeeding mom, so that was all in our history. That'll mess them up for a while. That's a quick way to develop a breastfeeding fetish. When I was first discovering that there was porn on the internet, my family had an M-Machine, Shudder, in the living room. It was set up in such a way that the computer was behind and apart from our TV, so you could browse in relative privacy. I found some website full of girls in bikinis, not even any nudity, and looked through it in fascination while my dad watched football. Then I had a panic attack and deleted my history of browsing that site. Then panicked even more and told my dad that I went to a site, and this other site popped up full of bikini girls and shut it down. So he came and checked my history and couldn't find any evidence of it. He wasn't an idiot, I'm sure he knew what I did. But he let it slide. As the kid, I accidentally left open a couple of porn tabs on my laptop that my mom had access to. Both times it was pictures of topless celebs. My mom gave me relentless shit for it every time we would see one of them in a movie or something. Luckily, my mom was cool as shit. Otherwise, I'd be 100 times as embarrassed as I am now, all these years later. While I'm not a parent, I once helped a family set up their home computer network. And in the course of doing so, I ran into a patently bizarre sort of family feud. At the time of this story, I was casually acquainted with a young woman who had, via a process of not-so-subtle suggestion and outright pleading, convinced her aunt, Ellen, we'll call her, to finally get her children, ages 10 and 12, their own personal computers. Why this was such a powerful obsession for my friend is still unknown to me, but I agreed with the sentiment. After all, these kids had been limited to using the family computer for the majority of their lives, which had made school projects and socialization alike into somewhat difficult tasks. After having finally been convinced, Aunt Ellen bought each of her children a desktop computer. Then, to further cement her household's position in the information age, she switched from the bottom-rung DSL connection they'd been using and upgraded to a respectably fast cable service. The inclusion of television channels and a home phone line may have helped her with that decision. However, she discovered with some dismay that setting up her network was a bit of a daunting challenge. That's where I came in. At first, this seemed like it would be a simple endeavor. I'd just set up a router, install a couple of wireless NICs, and be done with it. However, Aunt Ellen had a few special requests. The most important thing, she told me, is an internet password. I nodded my understanding, though I wasn't completely sure what she wanted. "Do you mean a Wi-Fi password?" I asked. "Something to protect your wireless network?" "Oh yes, certainly that," replied Aunt Ellen. "But I also want to keep my kids off the internet if it's past dinner time. That's when all the creeps come out." Well, that was fine. I had some private thoughts on the matter, but I wasn't there to offer parenting advice or play internet educator. I set up the network, put the necessary conditions in place on the router, and moved on. "Okay, great," Aunt Ellen said, visibly pleased. "Next, put passwords on each of the new computers." She didn't immediately offer an explanation for this, but my assumption was that it was to keep her son, the 10-year-old, from snooping on his sister's machine, and vice versa. "Do you want to have your kids set up their own passwords?" I asked. Aunt Ellen's answer was accompanied by a look of shock. "Oh, no, 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 only my husband and I will know them. I don't want my kids on the computer without permission." Again, this seemed counterproductive to me, but I held my tongue and did her bidding. With everything complete, my final task was to reconnect the family computer to the network and go on my merry way. I didn't know it at the time, but my job was only halfway finished. The following day, I received a phone call from my friend. Her Aunt Ellen, it seemed, was having some unspecified difficulties with the new network setup, and she wanted to know if I could stop by to help with them. I was wary of becoming the family's personal IT technician, but the fear that I'd done something wrong brought me back to their house. Upon arrival, Aunt Ellen explained to me that her husband had been unable to check his email the night before. "I know you did your best," she said, "but do you think maybe something went wrong?" "Well, I can certainly find out," I replied. "Do you know if he used the right password? Remember, if it's after 7, you need to enter it first." Aunt Ellen smiled and nodded. "Oh yes, definitely. I even tried it myself." I was skeptical, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt and pulled up the router's configuration page. Everything seemed to be in order, except for an extra entry that I'd never seen before. It specifically locked a handful of URLs, each of them clearly pornographic in nature, and had the curious label of "No Facebook equals no porn." "I need to check something," I told Aunt Ellen. "Do you mind if I look at—" I thought for a brief moment before continuing. "May I look at your daughter's computer?" We went up to the girl's room and had a look at the computer in question, after Aunt Ellen made me avert my gaze while she entered the necessary password. Lo and behold, somebody had created a second administrator account, and their browser history showed that it had been used the night before to access the router. Suddenly, it dawned on me. I'd never changed the router's default password, and Aunt Ellen's sweet, innocent 12-year-old daughter had taken it upon herself to passive-aggressively block her father's access to his pornography. It was, to say the least, an awkward predicament. Fortunately, I managed to resolve the situation while leaving everyone's pride intact, although it took a lot more finesse than I had expected the task to require. In the end, the father's browsing capabilities were restored, the router's password was changed, and nobody, save perhaps the 12-year-old, was any wiser. And even though I undid her work, I left the bent paperclip that I saw beside the girl's keyboard. A precocious preteen passive-aggressively prohibited paternal pornography. My 5-year-old hates Steph Curry for some reason. My wife allows the kids to use her iPad, and after she got it back from our son, she saw that he had searched. Steph Curry home. Cut off legs. Cut off a person's legs. Stephen Curry legs. Band-aids for legs cut off. He later revealed that he wanted to cut off Steph Curry's legs in order to prevent him from playing in the finals. Ebony with black girl white guy but not white girl black guy. 13-year-old at the time. Not a parent, not my kid. My friend came over with his very sheltered and Catholic 10-year-old hell spawn. The kid threw tantrums, screamed, and ran amok. Well, while I was playing Xbox, PC can't do local multiplayer, with my pal, looking at the shit 30 frames per second compared to my sweet buttery 60 frames per second, the hellspawn used my PC. Not only did he break the enter key, got a replacement, but this was the search history. What is porn? Do turtles have penises? TM anti-porn. You can imagine my surprise. My 8-year-old recently discovered the OK Google feature on my phone. Every search opens a new window on my phone, so I can see much of his search history nearly instantaneously. Some have been, show me the strongest man in the world. What does the strongest man in the world drive? What is the fastest car in the world? Jake Murray. What is the best playground in the world? My girls love OK Google. I think the only risky search has been, why did Jabba dress Princess Leia like that? Sounds like the history every time my 8-year-old nephew picks up the phone. Show me pictures of a fat man. sumo wrestlers, big fat dudes, monster trucks, World War II. My son was acting a bit weird, so I decided to look through his search history. Lots of searches along the lines of what's kissing like, what's sex like, how to get girls to notice you. At that point, I knew I had to have a talk with him. I sat him down and slapped him on the head and said, "God damn it, you're 27 years old. Just go to a bar and get drunk or something." Not my kid, but my little brother once searched, "How to make pancakes for mommy and daddy." I just thought it was cute he put the last bit. Plot twist. The little brother is 34. Not a parent, but my mom once asked why I'd searched, "What would happen if I shoved a firecracker up my butthole?" Had a friend catch his little brother Google, "Girls' pinnies, girls' peens, girls' penis, girls' penis." Had a real long laugh about that. Super Mario Sunshine walkthrough video, no bad words. My brother Googled Brit Spars naked when he was probably 11. Pretty sure he wanted Britney Spears naked. He was and still is terrible at spelling. Fun fact, if you rearrange the letters in the name Britney Spears, you can spell Presbyterians. My first ever Google search when Google first came out was because my dad was helping me with a social studies project on Brazilians. He left the room to check something. I Googled, for the first time on my own, Brazilian naked people. He came back. I F5'd that son of a bitch and thought I had gotten away with it all. He continues where we left off, Googling Brazilian. Horror strikes as when I type in the letter B, my last search pops up as an autofill option. He just paused and looked at me and said, "Suraman." In an exasperated, amused voice, I was embarrassed. We continued on with the project like nothing happened. I'm posting this here regardless, but back when my brother was about 12 or 13, he still is terrible with spelling. Well, I went to use the computer one day after he was finished, looking through my documents to find a few superhero pictures I saved. I stumbled across a folder titled Hot Grills. There were no grills in there, but he was tenderizing his meat with what I found inside that folder. Oh yeah, that bitch is the Weber Burnmaster. Runs on nothing but sexy propane. My oldest son. Girls playing with themselves. Well, how old was he? 13.